I'm trying to coexist, exist. Yeah, I'm trying to coexist, exist. I'm trying to coexist.
In a crisis, your brain doesn't care about shareholders, your legacy, your moral, your ethics, your beliefs. It only cares about one thing and one thing only: surviving the next 5 seconds. We like to believe, like in the situation room or on the boardroom, conference meetings, logic always prevails. We tell ourselves that the highest levels of power, men and women, weigh the pros and cons on a balanced scale of justice. But biology tells a different story. There is a moment, milliseconds after a crisis hits, where the most expensive education in the world, the best schools, the best mentors, the best colleges, the best books, is rendered useless by a piece of tissue the size of an almond. Think about that. It overrides your MBA. It silences your moral compass, and it turns anyone, including a CEO, a president, into a frightened animal. Fear doesn't discriminate. Today we're not just talking about leadership theory. We are talking about the biology of cowardice. Welcome to the anatomy of fear. Welcome to the Ethics Club podcast, where we explore human experiences. We're going to start with a critical question about fear. To understand fear, we have to understand what is the amygdala. And in order to understand why good leaders can make catastrophic choices, we have to look under the hood. Let's start with the culprit. We hear the word amygdala thrown around in pop psychology all the time. But strictly speaking, what is it? What's its function? How important is it? And let's start with knowing that it is the oldest, most primitive security system we own. The amygdala is a small, almond-shaped cluster of nuclei located deep within the temporal lobes. Think about it as the brain's smoke detector, the alarm system, the one that detects imminent danger. And its only job, its singular evolutionary purpose, is to scan the environment for threat. Think about that. A scanning system for any type of danger. And to make matters worse, it's fast. How fast? Incredibly fast. It processes information in milliseconds. Long before the information reaches your conscious mind. Just think about that. You're not even conscious before this information is already in the amygdala. It's the first filter of how we recollect data. Think about if you were afraid of a snake. Before you even realize that you're looking at one, your amygdala has already seen the shape. It spikes your heart rate and perhaps tense your legs to run. It bypasses the thinking brain entirely. And why? To put you on survival mode so you can live another day. And it's fascinating because this information makes your brain tell your kidneys to release adrenaline, and that adrenaline pumps into your heart. And this is where we start having palpitations. Fascinating, right? And we have to understand how useful this was, especially when we were running from predators, when we were being hunted, when we haven't formed tribes yet. But let's bring it to today's day. How does this look like in a modern office space? Because we aren't running from tigers anymore. We are running from emails, from information, from people, from tasks, from obligation, responsibility. We're running away from bad quarterly reports. And more important, and we also have to realize we fall victim into the perfectionist trap very easily. And the amygdala's design flaw is that it cannot distinguish between a physical threat to your life or a social threat to your ego. This is the reason why we feel attacked. And let's analyze this a little bit more contextually. To your brain, an order, a poem, feels exactly the same as you were being attacked by a tiger, by a mammoth. The alarm bell rings as loud as you were being chased by an angry mob or something or someone pointing a gun at you. And the worst thing is when that bell rings, it creates and it initiates a hostile takeover of your entire nervous system, preparing you for the famous freeze, flight, or fight. And we have to identify how fear kills reason. Let's talk a little bit more about that takeover. We've described a situation where the brain mechanism essentially short circuits. And we must ask ourselves, how does the amygdala affect our ability to reason. It's a zero-sum game or zero-sum game. I want you to imagine a seesaw. On one side, you have the prefrontal cortex. This is the executive center. It handles logic, reasoning, impulse control, future planning, plotting, and our ethics. It's the part of you that knows right from wrong, similar to what Sigmund Freud explains about the id, the ego, and the superego. On the other side, there is the amygdala, which we've been talking about. We're lecturing. The issue here is that they can't both be in charge at the same time. So one or the other has to function. When the amygdala spikes and creates high arousal, it physically shuts or shoots blood flow and oxygen away from the prefrontal cortex. This is what we call cortical inhibition. Literally, the logic center goes dark. It's opaque. This means that in the state of a high fear, a leader or anyone, any person, is biologically incapable of complex, nuanced thought. Their IQ drops 20 to 25% immediately. And why? Is because they lose the ability to see the future. They are so present in that moment because of how they feel and how they're scanning the environment or the threat they believe to see. They cannot project themselves. And this happens to everyone and anyone. Like I said before, fear does not discriminate. It affects every one of us in the same biological matter. This explains so much about CEOs and leaders, ethics and values. We see this in scandals constant. For instance, a CEO, a hedge fund manager, executive, a politician gets caught in a lie. And instead of coming out clean, what is the first thing they do? And coming out clean is the logical path. It's the long-term play to feel at peace with yourself. But what is it that they do? They instead lie more. They try to shred the documents like we have seen in many movies. I remember a scene from The Devil's Advocate where they're trying to shred all the documents and hide the truth about their operations. But the most significant thought we all have is when we look at them and say, how could they be so stupid? Didn't they know they could get caught? Well, they will get caught at some point. But in that moment, we're being irrational. You're not thinking about next year, the following day, the following month, the following week. You're not thinking about your siblings, your family, your kids. The amygdala all is doing is screaming to survive for the next 5 minutes. Hide the threat, stop the pain, stop the embarrassment, stop the persecution. The ethical brain this whole time, as we explained before, was shut down, was offline. They were operating on pure animalistic reflex, primitive instance of survival. So we have to ask ourselves, is unethical behavior in a crisis actually a failure of biology? Give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think based on what we're talking about. Have you ever lied instead of facing the truth? Your ethical truth? More importantly, are you fighting your own wiring to do the right thing? Because at the end, we have to ask ourselves too, is panic the enemy of our integrity and value? And since we're talking about stress factors, because to keep a lie, it becomes more stressful every single time as you have to cover up and create another lie. Let's talk a little bit about that, the cortisol and the freeze. And cortisol is just not electricity, a shock. It's chemistry. When the alarm rings and it's telling you to move, the body floods with chemicals. And those chemicals are reacted by cortisol. And as you all probably know, cortisol is the stress hormone. In a short burst, it's good. It focuses you. It stresses you enough to concentrate on something. Give you a good example. The reason why we wake up after we sleep is thanks to that, to cortisol, making us focus to wake up. But it also prepares you to fight. But in high-stake leadership, what is cortisol doing? Because now the stress doesn't become a burst. It's a constant hum. It's there present too long. And what are the effects when our cortisol levels are high? They hum all day. And as you probably guess, chronic cortisol, it's toxic to the brain. It's the poison to the brain. It actually damages the hippocampus, the part of the brain that is responsible for memory and content. This leads to what we call hypervigilance. Those that have been at war, that have been under tremendous stress, you see them looking to the left, to the right, not knowing if something is going to pop up Suddenly, they're always expecting the worst. This is also happening to our executives, our politicians. They feel under attack all day, every day. They fear not having the power, the status quo, finance, the elitism. A leader with chronic cortisol poisoning, they see threats where there are none. They imagine the threat. It's called something automatic negative thoughts. I'll give you a good example of what that can look like. And we've probably seen this a lot in the corporate environment and at work, or even when we're playing a sport as a team member. Think about when an employee asks just a simple question. They ask a simple question, and that is taken by the leader as insubordination. And what comes next is retaliation from that leader, abusing the power they have. Also think about the partner that just offers you advice, and that is seen as betrayal. People with cortisol poisoning, they become paranoid. Everyone is the enemy. They're not safe anywhere and everywhere with anyone. And think about this. Paranoid leaders create toxic environments, toxic cultures, division, disunity. And the reason being is because they're always striking first. Almost like Machiavelli said, get them before they get you. And they're striking imaginary enemies because after all, nobody's coming there to get them. But they have this tale created in their brain, and it becomes their defensive mechanism where they hide. And the only thing they know is to fight to protect themselves. And then right after this, we see the freeze response, the still moment. We all know what fight and flight looks like. It's a very reactive you're able to see, but the most dangerous out of all of these is the freeze. Why? Because the brain calculates that it can't fight or flight. It's trapped. It can't run away. So what it does, the response, it plays dead. Fascinating, right? In a corporation, this looks like analysis paralysis, where now you start to see the yaysayers. The people that would not speak their mind, although they're thinking about it, but they just keep to themselves. And this mask that people wear feeds the shadow, creating huge loads of cortisol that transforms into resentfulness. I want to dare you guys to, let's try to form like a committee. Let's commission another study. Let's wait for more data. This is the common things people would say. Let's wait. What they're doing is they're stalling. They're hoping that the threat disappears because they don't know how to respond to it. They believe that standing still long enough there, the threat would go away. But in the modern world, in today's day, in today's workplace, in today's schools, in today's office, standing still is a decision. Similar to if you ever experienced a leader not making a decision as they try to wash their hands, is perhaps the most cowardless decision a leader can make. Saying that they cannot make a decision, although they can ultimately do it to make and create a bigger impact on themselves and on others. And while people freeze, expecting the threat to run away, let's think about what happens internally. The reputation burns. The freeze is what often kills the company and not the initial crisis, because what's in stake is the reputation. If the company or the leader fearlessly made the right choice for everyone and where everyone went. Have you ever faced a leader that gave you the answer of, that's not my position, I don't oversee that, I can't answer that, I will have to consult with someone else, it's above my pay grade? This is the example of not making a decision is a decision. You should be very careful about encountering these kind of leaders. They are the worst. They're only there to save themselves, no one else. And as you freeze, let's think about what happens in your brain, right? We start getting all these automatic negative thoughts that doesn't seem to want to go away from you. They chase you. The mind is racing everywhere and anywhere. The voices inside of your brain starts to whisper your insecurities. It starts to pinpoint your vulnerabilities, making you feel unworthy. It says things such as, you're a fraud. You're not worthy. You're not good enough. You don't deserve X, Y, and Z. And in most cases, this is the end. A lot of radical thinking, radical negative thinking. But we got to ask ourselves, why is that voice there in the first place? Why does our brain default to the worst case scenario? Is there an advantage of thinking in this way? Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. We have to understand evolution. In order to answer this question, we must accept that we have a negative bias or negativity bias. Let's go a little bit back in time so we can understand this negativity bias. Let's imagine two old people walking in a jungle. They hear a movement, a rustle in in the bushes. The first person, or we can say answers to A, thinks it's probably just the wind, which we can say that's a positive thought or a neutral thought, not perceiving a threat. But answers to B, or the person B, thinks the contrary. He yells, and his brain is making him aware that there's a possibility, or not even a possibility, there is a tiger, a negative thought, a threat. And let's think about it. If it's a tiger, person A gets eaten. There's no way you can outrun and overpower a tiger, right? Ancestor B, or person B, runs away and survives the encounter, if that tiger existed, to pass on his genes. Survival to the fullest. What I'm trying to explain here is that we are the descendants of pessimists. We come from the descendants of warriors. We worry all the time. Even when we feel at the most safest, we still feel vulnerable. Our brains are hardwired to overestimate threats because that's what kept us alive for so long. Excuse me. So we gotta ask ourselves, our automatic negative thoughts, are they essentially a survival script gone wrong? Let me know what you think about that. And we can say they are a malware more than an error, left over from the Stone Age. It's encrypted in us. But let's look at it, how they generate in a modern times, modern brain, modern people. And it's all about the repetition, because neurons that are fired together, they wire together. I want you to think about if you have spent 10, 15 years telling yourself you're not worthy, you're not worth enough, especially when you make a mistake, you have literally created a super highway for that thought and believing in it too. And it becomes automatic instantly. You don't think about it anymore because it just comes. It becomes a reflex, just like breathing, automatic. These particular thoughts can paralyze a leader and anyone in the world that oversees other people. And even those that are overseen are paralyzed. Because if your internal script says, I'm going to fail, your brain will automatically sabotage your actions to make that prediction come true. I'm going to say this again. Your brain will create an imposter syndrome to make it come true, because the brain likes to be right and likes to predict the unknown. How do we stop an automatic process that we have created for ourselves that is not healthy? And this is where we have to move from the subconscious to the conscious. We have to start killing the ants, or automatic negative thoughts. The solution is simple. Interrogate it. A process of interrogation makes you reason about it, about every automatic negative thought. You need to treat the thought like a hostile witness in a courtroom. You want to cross-examine it, ask deep questions to figure out if these automatic negative thoughts are true or not. Give you an example. If the thought says, everyone hates this strategy, which is radical, implying that everyone means everything and anyone, you should pause and ask yourself, is this true? How can I know this is 100% sure? And usually if you start using your consciousness, the answer is no. By simply questioning the thought, you break the automatic loop. You're empowering your consciousness to look for the truth. You force the prefrontal cortex to wake up and audit the amygdala. That is the key. The question is not to silence the amygdala, it's to question it, to see if there are facts that can sustain what the amygdala is the fear signal is trying to submit. Now, will this shut down immediately? No. It takes a lot of practice. It takes years of practice. Cognitive therapy helps a lot with this, where you're able to question your amygdala and at the end, stop the fear cycle that consumes you. But is fear bad? And we have to ask ourselves, if we knew how to handle fear and control it and mold it to our needs, fear will become more of a moral compass, a guide. Because sometimes what happens is we demonize fear so much that we forget it's good, the good in fear. We treat fear as if it's a defect, but we have to ask ourselves why God gave us this wiring. He gave it to us for a reason. And let's try to picture a scenario where fear is actually the most intelligent thing in the room. But in order to do that, we have to distinguish between irrational panic and somatic intuition. And to understand somatic intuition, let's understand the theory of the somatic marker hypothesis. It suggests that the body stores emotional memories of of past outcomes. When you are about to make a bad decision, like signing a contract with a dishonest partner, providing money to someone you know is not going to pay you back, it's dishonest, it's somebody not liable, your amygdala might send a signal before your logic catches up. And this is what we call that sixth sense, that intuition, that knot in our stomach. And that knot in the stomach is not always weakness. Sometimes it's fundamental data. If you are a leader and you feel a wave of nausea or dread before approving a strategy, that might be your ethical alarm system warning you of something. Why, you will ask? Like, why do I get this? It's because your body knows, your brain knows. You're violating your own rules, your own ethics, your own values before your brain has even rationalized the excuse is going to make. What a fascinating signal. Before you can rationalize it, you can feel it and you can prevent things from happening. The goal isn't to be fearless. Let's get that straight. The goal is to interpret the signal. If the fear is, I might be losing money, that's the ego talking. But if the fear is, I feel sick about doing this, that is your moral compass vibrate. And let's be honest, have you ever made a decision where all these things were happening in your brain and you still didn't trust your intuition? Still did it? Knowing that it was bad, knowing the results, knowing the consequences? Let me know what was that decision and how did it affect you? And were you able to recover from it? There's a beautiful scripture in the Bible. It says in 2 Timothy, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but the power and love, but of power and love, and of a sound mind. A sound mind doesn't ignore fear. I want you guys to understand that. A sound mind is not about being fearless. What happens, a sound mind interrogates, asks questions, become curious about its surrounding, about its reality, about the future, about consequences. It asks questions such as, why am I afraid? Is this my pride protecting itself? Or is this my integrity warning me? But this is what we call courage, the definition of courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear, recognizing it as a warning light that is present, and then using your prefrontal cortex to decide why is fear there in that moment. We absolutely don't want to have leaders that don't feel nothing, because that's also radical, and perhaps worse than having somebody just deciding on pure logic without measuring emotions. It will bring its own catastrophe, because leaders who feel nothing are psychopaths. And we will talk another episode about psychopaths' behaviors. What we want is leaders who feel the fear and use it as a map to guide themselves to better outcomes and guide others to success and growth. What are your thoughts? Have you experienced a leader like that? Leave your comments. But how do we do that? We have to learn how to rewire the machine, the brain. And this takes a lot of therapy and training. How do we get there? How do we train the brain to stop freezing and start interpreting, start asking questions and investigating? Think about it. If we are hardwired to panic, can we build a better braking system? And we absolutely can. It's called neuroplasticity. You can teach the brain logic, or the logic brain, to quiet the fear brain faster. There are 3 main protocols we use in high performing setting. The first one is stress inoculation training, which a lot of people know as exposure therapy. This is what Navy SEALs do. You just don't talk about the crisis. You simulate it. You imagine it. You picture it. You expose the brain to the panic trigger, absolutely in a controlled environment, again and again, over and over. What does this do to the brain? Eventually, the amygdala is going to stop labeling the event as a threat, and it starts labeling it as a problem. You see the difference? A threat and a problem. A problem challenges you. A threat puts you in danger. There's a big difference. It's all about the perspective we're going to give it, the new point of view, the real fact about the problem. When you do that, you decentralize the alarm and you start hearing more of the data. You're more in touch with your present, and more in touch than with your fear. Have you ever experienced this? And then we have cognitive behavior therapy. This connects back to the automatic negative thoughts. This is all about cognitive reframe. And this is all about how we label things. When the fear says, this is a disaster, I'm ruined, I'm done, I can't do it, I could never do it. All these radical responses. CBT trains you to catch those thoughts and rewrite it, re-scripture it, relabel it. And instead of using these radical, catastrophic statements that your brain creates inside of you, we rewrite it in a way that we can say to ourselves, this is just a challenge. something I haven't seen, but I have the resources to handle it. What this does, it forces the prefrontal cortex to stay online, to stay active, to question the negative thought that the amygdala is creating. And this is so important where instead of relying on the safety or the safety networks you created, you start relying more on your competency, on your own competence to handle the unknown, the chaos, the disorganization. Because at the end, you will be the biggest winner if you become adaptable and evolve in your new environments. And last but not least, something that is so helpful that I wish we can train people from a young age is the physiological regulations that we can do, that we have absolute control. And to be honest, this is the most efficient, the fastest override. It's almost like the psychological sit. And it's all about breathing. It's all about the relaxation of taking a short breath and exhaling all the air out. Repeat this process again and again, and you will start feeling how your body and your mind starts to relax. Your heartbeats are going to slow down as well. And why is it so effective? Because this mechanically offloads the carbon dioxide and tells the nervous system, we're not dying. There's no catastrophe happening. Let's relax. It's okay. This also creates a bottom up, a twist, the calm moment that allows the brain to turn back into logic. Ethical courage is a muscle. You have to repeat until you master it. Breathing is all about the exhaling. When you exhale and you deflate completely, you're going to start feeling how your muscles relax. And you're going to start eventually paying more attention to your breathing than to how you feel or what you're thinking. You're stopping your brain from telling your kidneys to produce adrenaline to panic. You're signaling your brain to be relaxed, and you are in complete control of that. Regardless of how you feel, if you do it repeatedly, your body is going to be in tune with the mind. And this is so important that we do these breathing techniques when there is no danger, when the stakes are low, because if you're able to navigate and do this and apply this when everything is at peace, you will be able to do this when there is chaos. It's very hard to implement this or learn this when there's chaos, because already in chaos, it's going to disrupt your logical thinking. I would recommend 3 times a day, 10 minutes a day, just breathe and exhale all the air out of your lungs for 10 minutes, 3 times a day, and you will see how good you get and how you can use this tool when it matters most. Do you know how to breathe to overcome or prevent a panic attack? And this saddens me a lot, seeing that most people don't know these techniques that are so simple, cost-effective. We have a missing curriculum here. And when we breathe, we're able to rationalize better, to be more of a team. I want to zoom out for a second because we're talking about C-suite leaders today. And we have to be honest, we're looking at a world that is literally on fire right now. We see political polarization, cancel culture mobs, skyrocketing incarceration rates, and greed that defies logic, creating the chaos in where we live today. The question is it possible that all of these societal ills are actually symptoms of a mass regulation failure? What I call the lack of psychological education in schools from an early age. One thing we can't deny is that we are a society of high functioning intellects with the emotional regulation of a toddler. I want you to think about that for a second. The emotional intelligence of a toddler. Pardon me. We resent, we hate, we take vengeance, we retaliate. We don't know how to handle power. Why is that? Think about just breathing. How many people know how to breathe? It seems so simple, but it is the remote control for the vagus nerve. If we just simply taught in schools breathing techniques to activate the parasympathetic nervous system in kindergarten, as early as kindergarten, we would change the trajectory of the nation and what we're living up with ICE and wars and the division of wealth, etc. Because at the end, we have to connect the dots. Tribalism and division hurts us. That is the amygdala seeking safety in the numbers, seeking power to defend itself from any threat. That's the us versus them theory we were talking the last episode. Cancel culture has surfaced in the last 5-10 years, creating what? Has it solved any problems? Has it been fair? Has it been just? What I can say is this is a collective fight response. That's all it is. Fearing what they don't know or fearing a threat. It's herd panic. Greed. Greed is all a dopamine chasing to soothe, to feed a anxious brain. Incarceration. Let's look at that. That is often the result of an amygdala hijack, which turns into violence, an impulsive reaction, because the braking system doesn't exist. The prefrontal cortex wasn't strong enough, wasn't developed properly to break from the amygdala that causes the fear factor. We have failed tremendously, but that doesn't mean we can't rectify. What are your thoughts? Leave a comment. And I don't want to forget something that is hurting us the most, which is phone addiction. We are using our screen as digital pacifiers. When we feel a microdose of anxiety, when we feel uncomfortable about it, we scroll. It numbs the amygdala for a second. It quiets it down. That's why we find it so reconforting. But the problem is we aren't regulating. What we're doing is just we're sedating it. We're making it numb, but it can't stay numb forever. How do we fix this formation, this addiction? And more importantly, what would the world look like if we taught psychology from age 5? We will have like an emotional hygiene. We will clean up the mess we have created because we will know how to control the amygdala with our prefrontal cortex. Pardon me. Just as we teach kids how to brush their teeth, how to write, how to read, how to use the bathroom. And all this is just to prevent decays. The question is, why haven't we tried to prevent decays from a psychological perspective? We need to teach how to regulate our nervous system from an early age to prevent violence. Imagine a classroom where before a test, the teacher encourages and says to his or her students, let's do 3 minutes of box breathing to lower our cortisol levels so we can access our answers. Just think about that for a second. Think about the impact something just like that will do to our brains, to our development, to our growth as a community. Handling emotions from as early as the stress factors of a test. Do we do that in our schools? Our schools are more focused about the agenda than the education itself, the budget than the student's dignity, the college setting instead of the growth. If you teach a child to recognize that they are angry and their chest is tight, and the first thing they do is say, I need to breathe, that child grows up to be a leader that doesn't need to scream, doesn't need attention, doesn't need validation, doesn't need to bully, doesn't need to seek for richness to feel safe, because its safety or his safety or her safety is not a place, a thing, a person. It's their competency, how competent they are to handle the emotion and become logical and reasonable with it. This is why we're seeing a crisis of leadership. Look at our politicians. Look at those in charge. Has anything changed for the better good of everyone? Think about all the CEOs. Who are they promoting? Is it the same people in their safe circle? Why haven't you moved up? Why is there less middle class? Why is there's a lot of that 1 or 2% that has so much and 98 or 99% that have very little? This is the result of psychological education, or I would say the lack of it. We are taught on how to handle algebra, which is great, but we're never taught on how to govern our own biology and psychology. They're both equally important. And think about when we hire leaders, we hire them based on their resume. We look at their degrees, their past wins, their stock prices. What are they worth? Where have they been? Are they part of the elite? But maybe we're looking at the wrong metrics when we hire a leader. Maybe we should be hiring them for their regulation. What is the purpose of a leader when you hire them? What will you want to see them achieve besides the results? The next time you see a leader fail, when you see them lie, freeze, feel uncomfortable, or lash out, ask yourself this question before you judge, because we all fall victim of judging the unknown, what we don't know. Was it a lack of skill? Or was it a biological hijack they were never trained for? Again, I'm not trying to justify wrongdoings, but I'm trying to make you see is there's a educational responsibility we all owe to one another. When you feel fear rising, don't run from it. Stay there. Instead, ask it what it's trying to tell you. Because at the end, if you can't control your cortisol, you can't control your company, you can't control a team, you can't control yourself. And this is what I want to leave you with. Don't let your biology become your apology. More solutions, less excuses. Let's be responsible. Let's also walk in faith and regulate our fears. Until next time, thank you. Welcome back again, Ethics Go Podcast, where we explore human experiences. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do not forget our campaign. We are committed to transform your subscriptions into pro bono programs for mental health. So you can free somebody's mind from their traumas and help them heal just by subscribing. Very simple, and it costs absolutely nothing. Help us through this campaign, and we just want to pay forward, not only to our viewers, but for those that can't afford mental health services. Just remember, the statistics are real. Only 4 out of 10 Americans can afford mental health services. So help us change that. Hopefully, we can move the statistics and perhaps move it from 4 to 5 out of 10 people have good mental health services. Let's start.
To the success of the Unity Brunch, may we continue moving forward together. Cheers!